it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Lab podcast. And today our special guest is Michael Klein from Bio365. How are you doing today, Michael?
Doing great, James. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming on the show. The last time I saw you was at a Dead show. I think it was at Shoreline, at the Dead & Company Shoreline in 2023, maybe.
That's probably likely.
Yeah, with Shane and Tim and
right.
Within those guys. Yeah.
Seen quite a few shows over the days.
Yeah. How many shows?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
No, I toured full time with them from 85 to 95.
Nice.
And I've seen most of the following bands, most of the shows. So it's a couple thousand, I'm sure.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's never too late to have a happy childhood.
That's for sure. That's the beauty of it. So what do you think of the Sphere?
I was really impressed. I have to admit, what was a little disappointing for me was they didn't have enough time to develop the graphics, and the limited number of graphics that they had worked up limited the set list, so that you were seeing the same 3 shows pretty much each week. Well,
there's always time to change, and I guess they're coming back in a couple months here.
They sure are. And Bobby, wants to go out on stage. He's never going to stop.
No, he's like my father. My father will never quit working. My father loves working.
Yeah.
And Bobby's the same way. And he's one of the hardest workers out there.
He is. He's definitely, he's doing better than ever, physically, mentally. It's really impressive.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah,
it's people aging in reverse. Mila, the hash queen, Mila Jansen, she's another one that I feel like she's aging in reverse. It's like, it's great when you see people that are getting up there in years and they look younger than they did the year before, or even the year before that, sometimes even 10 years before.
I'm up there now and appreciating, my health and it went through 3 years. I just had a full hip replacement, and I was at Barton Hall with 20 guests, the heads of at least 3 of the top 10 MSOs.
Yeah.
And I couldn't attend because I was in so much pain and on crutches. I missed the show, but I had all my guests there.
Amazing. Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah, so tell us about Bio365 and how you got Bio365 off the ground.
Sure. And I'll try and give a really brief thumbnail on how I got to Bio365 so you can understand how twisted I am. So I basically had a great life growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. My father was very successful, and he was a little bit of a twisted old guy, and he tried to guilt me into achievement. He would, like when I was 12, 14 years old, he'd say, I hope you forgive me someday. You have to worry about feeding your children or keeping a roof over your head. And frankly, I don't see you have any reason to achieve. And without achieving, I don't know how you can feel good about yourself. Without feeling good about yourself, I don't know how you can ever be happy. So I hope you forgive me. And I'm going, where's the money, Dad? But I go off to college. Everybody's smarter than I am. Everybody's harder working than I am. And I go, shit, I've got to get an edge. And I just said, microprocessors. And I drove down to the electronics store and I bought a soldering iron and a MITS 8080 Altair kit. And I started building microcomputers and eventually started a microcomputer video game software company that did a lot of Atari's early wall and tank type of games.
Yeah.
And was off into data communications and software, and got really lucky. Sold my first data communications company and spun off the software from it and sold that again. And at 30, I retired, and I went, all right, I think I feel okay about myself. Who the fuck am I? What am I supposed to do the rest of my life? I mean, I was literally lost. So I did what I think any rational human being would do. I went on tour with the Grateful Dead for 10 years as social director.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was complete serendipity. I moved out to Mill Valley, and one of my best friends from Cleveland moved out there at the same time. And he calls me up one day and says, would you like to play in a flag football league? I said, sure. He says, okay, come on. And this first week we're going to play against Bobby Weir's team. Oh, I just went into shock. So I met Bob through that and became more or less an advisor, business advisor. I partner with Bob in Modulus Guitars. We're partners in Sweetwater and PRI Studios, and I had the time, and I was such a fan that the idea of spending 120 days a year on the road with them was heaven.
I bet.
And what I can remember was.
Yeah.
So I did that for 10 years. I got into things that were really important to me, not necessarily great opportunities. I had become a vegan and then a raw fooder, and opened up a raw food restaurant in Larkspur in around 2000. But let me get back to the dad. We had about, I'm going to say, 10 guys from Sonoma and Mendocino who they would give us these wonderful bags, and we would give them laminates, and then eventually, when after 96 or whenever the collective started up, they taught me how to grow and introduced me to the plant, and I ended up starting a collective in Sonoma, Level Valley, Sonoma, in probably around 2012.
Nice.
Anyway, that was my introduction to the plant. I mean, other than it had been my medicine of preference from the age of about 12.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly surprised by how many Ohioans have such a strong background with the plant.
Right.
So
farming,
yeah.
Farming, yeah.
And actually, that's how I also got into farming and soil, which is a good segue. At the raw food restaurant, imagine a restaurant where everything you served came in the door that morning as a raw fruit, nut, or vegetable.
Yeah. No
cans, no bottles. We had to dehydrate things for 2-3 days to create texture. But we grew a lot of our produce for the restaurant in our garden in Corte Madera. And I learned about living soil then. We were using compost.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I first really started getting interested in what made a plant taste good. Why were these giant tomatoes from the supermarket? Why did they all have no flavor at all?
Yeah.
But this ugly thing that came out of my backyard is just bursting with flavor. And
it's so amazing. I worked at Chez Panisse. I interned there 20 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And that was my experience, was like, how could this tomato taste so amazing compared to the stuff that I'm used to tasting? And my parents grew tomatoes and they were good, but this was even another level.
Well, it's amazing. And it's also really identical for cannabis.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of your audience has heard the living soil story and that. But just real quickly, plants spend a quarter to a third of their energy making specific food for specific biology that lives in their root zone that cycles specific nutrients. The plant needs magnesium. It makes up the food for the microbe in the soil that cycles magnesium, and it sweats it out through its roots. And the microbe brings the magnesium to the plant and exchanges it for the food that the plant makes for it. And that way the plant's feeding on demand, getting all the specific nutrients it needs to build the building blocks that its DNA is wanting to express.
Yeah.
I don't want to say bad things about salts or anything, because most of our customers use salts and some of them grow some pretty good cannabis, but you're basically filling up a bucket and hoping that it's going to meet the needs of the plant.
Right.
And the plant's needs are always real time. If an aphid lands on a leaf, the plant senses it actually makes up a food for microbes that float in the air. And it sweats it out through the leaf, and the microbes will come down and create a layer of slime over the leaf. And that's the plant's defense for that leaf-eating aphid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if 12 more aphids land on 12 other leaves, it's got to make 12 times that specific molecule.
Yeah.
And eventually, the bucket's going to run out of one. Mm-hmm. And that's that giant tomato that tastes like cardboard.
Yeah.
So it's really important to me that cannabis become more of an organically grown product. Yeah. I know the quality's better. I used to say that salts were force feeding a goose, but really it's waterboarding the plant. And that's just not a way to good health.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're moving in that direction. There's some people growing some organic fire out there.
Organic and synganic. I feel like synganic is a great approach too, where they're using synthetic with organics to try to achieve a great product. Well, I think at least it's a great direction.
Yeah. I'll tell you something really interesting. So we were doing an early test when we started the soil company. We were running our nutrient-dense soils against competitors, and we threw in one of our nutrient-light soils. And so basically, what our soil is really all about is biomimicry. Mm-hmm. And the first leg of biomimicry is biology in the root zone. It's not just a way of selective feeding so that the plant expresses itself better. It's also a big part of its defenses in the root zone. So the problem is a lot of good gardeners add biology and then it drains the waste with the rest of their stuff. And so I think I started to tell you earlier, my wife in 2007 started a biochar research company and created 5 patents around creating optimally temperatured and carbon content and inoculating the char with biology and with nutrients. And when you create biochar, you create a ton of synthetic natural gas, and right in the middle of their creating this capability, fracking came along and destroyed the business model so that they couldn't really go forward. They wanted to give the char away as a way of sequestering carbon. And so the soil scientist from Cornell, who was her partner, said, well, I'm just going to take this stuff and make a soil. But he wanted to make a living soil, and he patented a biological activation and aging process that we do in a HEPA-filtered indoor clean space. We don't use any unpasteurized manures in any of our nutrient packages. Yeah. And we're able to create a living base that we mix into all of our different media that's as clean and consistent as anything in any substrate out there. Yeah. But it's a whole community. We take our wide spectrum biology, biochar, and organic nutrients, and we put them through a 30 to 45 day activation and aging process. And the plants love it. So number one biomimicry is, does the plant have the biology it expects to see? One of the interesting things is if you don't have the biology, the plant is smart enough to stop wasting the energy of making the food, and it puts it into biomass, and that's why that tomato is bigger. Oh, okay. So the second leg of biomimicry is air and water porosity. Okay, because plants need space for their roots to grow. Our soils are remarkable in that our cocoa is 14% solid, 24% air, and 62% water. Mm-hmm. And so what we find is we will have a customer growing in a 5-gallon container, and we can grow a bigger plant in a 2-gallon container. Yeah, because it's all about root space and air, and then SOPs that support those roots, filling up the container. So that's really important. And the third thing, and this is something that is almost absent in most hydro operations, is when it rains and plants get water from the soil with tension. Mm-hmm. When it rains, there's plenty of water. The plant doesn't have to pull it all. The water's just there for it. Every day it dries out. Every day the plant has to pull a little harder to get water from the soil. Right. That dry stressing is probably, if not the number one trigger of secondary metabolites, it's up there. Mm-hmm. And you can't dry down plant in rock wool or in a straight cocoa. They don't hold water long enough, or even in a peat. So having a water release curve that mimics nature turns out to be really important for the plant to express itself in its best. Yeah. So that's really that's what our soils are about. We actually manufacture them in a not just completely indoors, meaning all inputs, all finished product are stored indoors. We Sallyport the building. Yeah. So that there's no way the internal factory can be open to the outside. And we, like I said, we use IPM in our production. We're using hypoacis mites and nematodes for fungal control. It's as clean as your grow rooms, hopefully. Yeah. And that shows off in its consistency and its performance. Excellent. We've been obviously going with the ups and downs or I should say mostly downs of the cannabis industry. Agreed. We've actually grown pretty successfully. I mean, we have more than half of the top 10 MSOs, GTI, Verano, PharmaCann, Columbia Care, Cannabis. But more importantly for me, we have the greatest group of foundational OGs, breeders, growers, who really understand our soil and are growing great fire with it.
Yeah.
And that to me is more rewarding. I'm very disappointed in what's happened to the cannabis industry. It doesn't honor the plant. It's run by finance people and get rich quick entrepreneurs that don't understand the plant or the values that created our community. And I'm trying to figure out how we can get back to where we started.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one solution. It's a bunch of small steps.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I had a very interesting final in business strategy at Harvard Business School. And it was about a lobster boat company that was very high tech. They had designed their whole fleet of lobster boats. They had a big R&D facility. They went out of business in about 2 years. And the thing was, the economics of the lobster business are determined by the economics of a boat with 3 guys on it. And that's their cost, and that's what they're going to sell at. And there's no advantage to scale. There's actually disadvantages of scale because you're paying for all of that R&D. You're paying to manage all of these people.
Right.
I think cannabis is exactly the same. The functional unit in cannabis is the room, whether it's 1,000 or 4,000 square feet. If you have 20 of them, you have more than 20 times the cost of one single 4,000 square foot room.
Right.
And I don't understand if cultivators are willing to fertigate. I don't understand why you can't be competitive in most states, depending on power and what the indoor prices, bottom out at. It's become a race to the bottom. And I just believe that cannabis can be grown less expensively than it is. There's too many people who have too many magic things they're throwing in there. They're not doing any real evaluation of side by side of what they're putting in and whether it's benefiting them.
Right.
They aren't really looking at system costs. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of cultural practices that have come from the old day when we didn't have room to cultivate the way we were trying to cultivate. So you up potted and you shove things this way and that way. And, there's really no reason to plant your clone anywhere and transplant it again. I mean, there's no reason to transplant at all after you plant your rooted clone.
Right.
And you can grow in much smaller containers, like I said, than people are growing.
Well, I think there's big benefit to growing in smaller containers. For us, it's dry bags, getting oxygen to the roots. But I think it's all, we're learning, and we go through these trends, whether it's using 18 inputs, as opposed to using 3, which I think is more common now than ever. So we go through these wild trends of, well, this has to be better, or this is better because this person does it, and maybe they're getting good results. But the flower's changed a lot over the last 10 years, especially. Mm-hmm. I got some really sticky flower that I'll show you later. And we're not seeing that anymore. We're not seeing the really, really sticky stuff that just, you could push it onto anything and it'll stick. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but also the genetics of preference. We've also bottlenecked ourselves into this corner
ladies cannabis.
Into this stuff that's much different, that doesn't necessarily taste like the cannabis that we grew up with, or that I grew up with. And I'm sure you've seen. It's like, it's interesting the way people think and the way people work, and how we get so excited about one thing that we lose all these other great things along the way.
Yeah.
And that's really happened since the 90s.
And in the whole industry, you don't really know what you're getting anyway. I mean,
that's the biggest misconception ever.
Well, I should take that back. I mean, it used to be, I heard this story that there was like 50 elders in Humboldt and people could present things to them and they would go, yeah, that's the real sour diesel, but unless you get from the original breeder, it's really kind of tough to know. And especially the new strains, the candy run stuff all tastes the same.
And it's all renamed. A lot of it's, not all of it, but a lot of it's renamed. And then sour diesel is the best example, because for the longest time, I almost thought my mind was playing tricks on me that I didn't remember it right. But then a guy named Dave, I talk about this on my podcast all the time. I was at Reggae on the River, and he comes up to me, gives me a bud, and it was the sour diesel I remember from my childhood. And there was one sour diesel that we had. There wasn't all these different. We had one. I mean, maybe there was more for other people, but back 2000 and before, there was one sour diesel, and I have some of it in my freezer.
Yeah.
But a lot of the sour that's going around now is this gassy version of sour diesel. So that's what people think sour diesel is.
Right.
And it happens over and over and over again. OG Kush, there's a lot of OG Kush around, but it's not the OG Kush I remember from 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah, it's funny to hear guys like Josh D and Ghost talk about it. They talk about having a cut of TK that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And they don't release it. You know, and I haven't smoked it, but they like swear by it.
I got some TK. Yeah. I got some TK here today.
But it's not. But is it the real TK?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, and it's so subjective because the name doesn't mean anything. And fingerprinting technology is going to help with that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the beauty. My Flora DNA and a couple other companies where you can fingerprint the genetics. They have basically 2,000 SNPs they can compare or more, right? And so it's actually more accurate than a human fingerprint. And they can tell you, yes, it's that exact thing, or no, it's not.
Right.
And so the more of us that go on board with getting our stuff fingerprinted, the easier it's going to be down the road.
Right. I agree. And I think blockchain is going to be involved in it. I think that there's a lot of technology that is coming at the plant, and I think in mostly positive ways. Exception of irradiation and a few things, but
for sure,
I think that there's so little science. We were talking about that earlier. That very few of my customers really know what the impact of their inputs are, or are willing to actually push the parameters on dryback, or use tensiometers to actually take the plant to where it's not going to go into wilt, but is really going to have to suck.
Yeah.
And again, there's just going to be a lot more science, I think, improving the practices.
Yeah, there has to be a lot more A/B testing. People need to do a lot of testing. Yeah. And the thing is testing it with most people is just like, okay, well, this was better. They're not documenting it. They're not doing it properly. I mean, there are people, and I take that back. There are people that are doing it correctly. We just need more of them.
Yeah. I found it really funny. I was in Florida up until 2021, and the product was just terrible. There were 17 licenses, maybe 12 of them were operating. Yeah. No competition, and now it looked like such an attractive state, especially with rec coming, that there's some real players down there growing some great cannabis.
Nice.
Like I don't know if you know Ideal out of Oregon.
Yeah, the name for sure.
They're growing 100% organic, just beautiful flower. There's real competition coming to Florida, and so I think it's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I hope everyone has access to good flower. At the end of the day,
these guys at Flowery, okay, they've got a whole pheno hunting setup. They're doing a lot of breeding. I think
Sunburn Cannabis. We got P
Bud Mike.
He's down there. He's doing his thing.
That's one of the great stories, Yeah. At a 1991 Grateful Dead show at Deer Creek, Indiana, ChemDog bought a bag off of P Bud Mike, and that was the start. That changed the game.
I have somebody gifted me tickets. I traded them for some seeds, but tickets from both the shows. So for the 91 shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
But and that serendipitous day changed the cannabis that we've seen. It's changed what we see now.
Yeah.
Without that, it would be different, I believe. I firmly believe it would be different. And they brought gas to the market, I think.
Absolutely.
Gas and, the funky stuff.
I think that and OG Kush, is just, those are my two foundational.
Yeah, I love both of those a lot.
Yeah.
And I have both, and I also do like some of the sweet stuff, and I like we have the GDPs, and I get excited. That's nostalgic for me too. Yeah. But I like the skunks. I like stuff that's really skunky. We had cat piss when I grew up.
Yeah.
That was the big thing, was that really nose burning cat piss. It wasn't gas like OG. It was skunky like a dead skunk or like a sprayed skunk.
Yeah.
With ammonia that burned your nose.
Yeah.
And that to me is what, that got me excited.
I saw that that Kevin and Skunk VA are putting together something where they're going to do tissue culture and run nursery ops, I guess.
Grateful Heads.
Grateful Heads. That's
Grateful
it.
Heads. Yeah. They're doing some cool stuff. And I think we're doing a breeding project trying to bring back the old cat piss genetics. I mean, I think we're doing it on the, so what cat piss is though, cat piss is a description of an aroma. What a lot of people don't get is like, they want to lay a flag in the ground and say, that was my cat piss. Well, maybe you had a cat piss and maybe this other guy did because it smelled like ammonia, or whatever it is. But that's a description of a smell. It's not like Blue Dream where it's like a strain name or a cultivar name. So I'm looking for that one that smells like sprayed skunk with ammonia that burns your nose. So, and over the years, I've smelled ammonia and stuff. We had the A5 haze and that was ammonia.
Right.
That was really good, but that was straight ammonia. That would burn your nose. I
didn't have that broad access, until the 2000s.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff just wasn't around. One of my mentors was a guy named Jabaya, and he had a strain which was a Blue Dream New York Sour Diesel cross.
Wow.
It was Alpha Blue. Is what he called it.
That sounds amazing.
And it was wonderful, but I couldn't get anybody to grow it because it's 12 weeks, and it's like,
it's rough. Even now, I mean, I have a Blue Dream times a double lemon cherry that's like a 9-weeker, and so, but it has everything that I love about Blue Dream, and so we're calling it Dream Candy. We're launching that this year.
Oh, nice.
So we pheno hunted that. We got 3 different ones. One's a dead ringer for Blue Dream that takes a little bit longer, and then we have the one that's somewhere in the middle where I feel like it can reintroduce Blue Dream to the world in a way where some of these kids that want that lemon cherry gelato runts, they'll be excited about it.
Yeah, that's great.
So sometimes you got to sneak it in the back door.
I'm building my home on Orcas Island now and putting in a room. So
nice.
I look forward to.
Yeah, genetics. I got genetics. We got lots of genetics.
I actually want to read your book too. I hadn't.
Yeah, I got a book for you as well. I'm excited to hear more about Bio365 and telling everybody about your product because I feel like you have a special substrate. It's not like other cocoa products. You have one that we did some trials side by side and we got much bigger plants and it wasn't even the one that was extremely hot.
It's interesting. The nutrient light soils, they still have that base of biochar and biology. They just have a smaller quantity of nutrients.
Right.
And every time you feed your salts to the plant, our biology is going to consume maybe 5 or 10%. And it's going to allow the plant to signal in between your feedings and balance itself off.
Right.
So we did this trial where we had our nutrient dense soils going against some competitors and we had one of our nutrient light soils in there and it actually outperformed the nutrient dense ones, which we'd never seen before. And we went back to the lab and actually measured the respiration of the biology and saw that the biology was growing from the salts. And so, most people say, oh no, salts kill biology.
Yeah.
No, lack of water kills biology.
Sure.
If your substrate holds enough water, the biology is fine. And so that surprises, but some of our best scale cultivators are really pushing the plant with the nutrient light soils where they're getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah,
we're seeing a lot more autoflowers out there.
Yeah, I think autoflower is slowly growing. What happened is it took this huge leap, and everybody decided they were going to plant acres and acres and acres of it, and then they didn't get the results they were looking for. So, but then a ton of people were making seeds. And everyone got excited about autoflower seeds. There's a couple companies that make really good autoflower seeds. I feel like I make great autoflower seeds, and there's a handful of other ones that are actually putting in the work.
One of the largest MSOs thought that they'd do 2 cycles, right, and just use it for molecules, right. And the flower turned out so beautiful, they ended up selling it as flower.
Yeah,
and they're doubling up this year and cutting back actually indoor.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen. Yeah. And it's funny. You can get a lot faster return. If you know what you're doing and you use large enough plant numbers, you can actually get higher yield and larger yields per acre.
Right.
It's incredible. And you can get more harvest per year. Yeah. So I love light deprivation. I love the quality of products you can get. And I love greenhouse too. I feel like greenhouse is the future. I feel like you can get an indoor looking product for those people that need their flower to look good.
Right.
I'm not one of those guys, but
I'm an outdoor believer.
Yeah.
But, I also, early on, I spent a lot of time in Colorado, maybe like 2018, 19.
Yeah.
And in Colorado, every year, one of two things would happen. Okay. There'd be hail and snow and freeze, and you'd lose 60, 70% of the crop, if not all of it.
Yeah.
Or the weather would be good and they'd turn out so much that the prices would drop $300-$400 a pound.
Wow.
I mean, it was a feast or famine. And there's just not enough visibility on supply in this business to not see it tilt into oversupply.
Unfortunately.
Especially with all this get rich quick. Wow. It's sad for me. It's really sad for me that the guys who really, built those foundational strains, who built the industry, the plant as we know it, they must have been screwed.
Yeah.
Being head cultivator at the biggest cultivator in California, you make the same as the chief executive's assistant.
Right.
And in California, it's not a great living. And anybody who went into business with their own capital got killed like everybody else. And it's just, it's been hard to see.
Well, that's why I don't do cultivation.
Yeah.
I love cultivating. I have a lot of respect for the guys that do it. They're doing the Lord's work.
Mm-hmm.
Because the price per pound is so low right now, it's very difficult to be successful.
Yeah.
And I would much rather work on the genetic side where I can work with everybody and I can be the Velcro.
Today, I think genetics, for the rec operations that we work with, genetics are the only way to differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
And that they need to.
Yeah, we try to do everything in-house. So literally we're doing the seed production, we're doing the pheno hunting, we're then licensing genetics, selling clones.
Yeah.
We're trying to stick with that nursery model, but I think the future is licensing genetics for us.
Yeah, I agree. There's a loophole now, I guess, that under the Farm Bill where
Absolutely.
you can ship clones and seeds anywhere.
Seeds anywhere, yeah. Well, as long as it's below 0.3% THC,
Right,
you can ship it anywhere. And THCA, right? So like you can have THCA that's high, whatever, but like some people are selling THCA flower that tested 23% THCA, but tests below 0.3% Delta 9 THC.
I'd like to know who bred that one.
Yeah, well, I think almost all of it is like that. And at the end, it tests higher for Delta 9 THC.
Okay.
So, it's a big loophole right now that will change. People are in denial, but they're going to change that kind of stuff.
I would think so.
So, but I do love the fact that you can ship seeds freely around the world, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely in the United States, you can go state to state without getting arrested or put in jail for a seed, which wasn't always the case.
Right.
But it is just a seed.
They've misregulated everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can bet on them fixing it or screwing it up worse.
Well, I think it's going to get fixed and then it's going to get screwed up worse again.
Because the Delta 8 stuff really bothers me.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate get rich quick. I don't care about the quality of the high.
No, and as a molecule, it's not a bad molecule. Yeah. There are no bad molecules in my opinion, but as far as like the get rich quick side of it, it's just kind of disgusting because they're taking the worst of the worst product, processing it, worst of the worst hemp, and turning it and processing it and turning it into a product that will get you high. It will have some effect on you. But what is it doing to your body?
Yeah.
What else is in there?
Again, it's anybody who's willing to jump through a loophole just to make a few bucks is not the cannabis industry I remember or want to.
No, unfortunately. Yeah. But, and then we go through waves with everything. So it's going to get better and then it's going to get worse and then it's going to get better. And to which degree we'll see. I mean, I think basically going from a Schedule 1 to Schedule 1 down to rescheduling to Schedule 3, I think that's a good thing. I think it's good and bad.
I think the big deal for the industry is the 280E because no one's making money. There's one or two companies really actually turning a real profit.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to refinance at much higher rates than their first round of financing. It's just been a horror show.
Yeah.
So 280, I think, is the most important for the economics of the industry. That has no impact on the structure or the quality of the industry, but it'll make it viable, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned that in bringing it down to Schedule 3, they might put other hoops around it that make it more difficult or more challenging for the operators. The Schedule 3 is supposed to have all sorts of facility rules and
right, it's supposed to.
Yeah,
but we'll see what happens.
That's right. We don't know. Nobody knows.
We don't know.
Right?
We don't know. And I mean, the truth is we don't know, and we can hope for the best. And I mean, we've done that in the past, and it hasn't always worked out for us.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. We have an opportunity to do something great.
Right. And I think you're right. I think we are improving. I know we are, but there's just that overall frustration, and we did blow a great opportunity, and I don't know how many more we'll get.
Yeah,
but it's also for bio, we're now looking at food crops, expanding. I mean, we developed our sales force with the kind of expertise in one plant.
Yeah,
that we're broadening now. We have always had a good microgreens customer base in the East, and we're doing something that we're really excited about. Is we're certifying our soil as pathogen free, Salmonella, Listeria, E. coli,
great,
and that's really it's important and for controlled environment agriculture and in the food side, that's really going to be important.
I agree. I mean, I think. Same thing with clones. I think clones should be certified pest and pathogen free. I think people should put that stamp on their genetics. Pathogens are such a big deal. And for the longest time, we were ignoring it, pretending it didn't exist. And then once they had to agree because it was devastating people, it was devastating states like California. I mean, I think we were so heavily infected with hoplite viroid and Fusarium. And I mean, people aren't even talking about Fusarium right now, but Fusarium is a huge problem.
In the East too, the humidity levels everybody overwaters. It's just.
And everyone wants to blame hoplite too then. And it's like, well, maybe it's hoplite and maybe it's Fusarium. I mean, there's other pathogens too. We're looking at, I think, over 50 registered pathogens in cannabis that they know of.
So I used to have a data communications business and we arbitraged in international rates, whether they were telex or fax or phone. And what we would do is we'd go into the customer and would say, look, it doesn't matter what you're paying per telex minute or fax minute or kilocharacters of email. Yeah. Your real costs are in your business process that creates and uses those messages for running your business and storing them and retrieving them and confirming they were delivered. And that's where all your costs are.
Yeah.
Let us paint a picture of a better world. And if you like it, we'll implement it for you. And then you'll have much better total system costs. And we would eliminate the paper and the people by doing things like taking an application system that would print out an airway bill. Mm-hmm. And then the person would take it off the printer to a fax machine and shove it in a fax machine. On the other side of the world, in the freight forwarder's other office, they'd take that fax machine paper and they'd key it into an application system on the other side. So we would hook a PC up to the application system looking like a printer. It would take that printed message, turn it into an EDI message, send it through our network, force deliver it to a PC on the other end of the world, where our PC would keyboard emulate the transaction into their application system.
Amazing.
Okay. And so eliminating the people, eliminating the paper, they save so much more money than didn't matter what they paid. And they were locked in forever with us.
Yeah.
Which was a nice side. In terms of system costs in cannabis, I was sitting there one day with a customer going over their cultivation costs, and they were paying $2.20 for a couple gallons of my soil. The pot they put it in cost $4. Every time they touched the pot, they had to fill it, empty it, wash it, sterilize it, was 50 cents. Mm-hmm. They were paying much more for the pot than they were for my media, which was the whole basis of their successful cultivation. And I said, that sucks. So the first thing we tried to do is eliminate the pot. And so most of our soil we deliver today in sealed grow bags, anywhere from 1.25 gallons up to 20 gallons.
Yeah.
And you know, you want to talk about, haploid latent viroid, the number one vector is probably the pot.
I would agree.
And
I would agree 100%.
You know, and you can go through all the work of sterilizing everything. You should, but you might as well get rid of the pot and save the money and the labor. And you know, we can actually engineer a bag with micro purations in it that let it dry back beautifully, much better than like a smart pot, which is all over the place.
Right.
You know. So that, you know, we're looking at system costs and trying to get people to understand where they're spending their time, where they're spending their dollars.
Touch points.
Yeah.
Understanding all that. Well, and there's so many little details that you need to be aware of when the profit isn't what it used to be, right? So every little cent counts.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the more you scale, the more that's noticeable too. But yeah, I mean, it's a different world. We live in a completely different world from the cocoa that I hated in the year 2000 when my buddy brought over these bricks of cocoa that were like this and a kiddie pool and a shovel and said, you got to break all these up.
You know, I really admire the regenerative farmers out there who are making their own soil and really loving it and seeing the benefits. I mean, there's no question whether you're talking Korean or biodynamic.
Biodynamic,
yeah.
Versus KNF,
natural. But if you ever had to price the labor and the time into it, you know, you obviously can't scale it, and it's just really hard to.
Very difficult to scale. So I heard Wrigley in Nevada is scaling. They do living soil, 40,000 square feet or something like that. But I think it's very difficult to scale and maintain quality.
Well,
I think with anything.
So when I was growing for my raw food restaurant, in order to really trust my compost, we had to buy a chicken coop and get chickens and generate our own chicken manure and you know, making sure you could get clean inputs was constantly the challenge. And controlled environment, you know, you're monocropping in incredible density.
Right.
It's a giant buffet. So most people won't bring compost into an indoor or unless they're doing it themselves and they really know.
Right.
And then that just becomes, again, really expensive. So, hey, guys, you're doing a great job. There's living soil that you can get right out of the bag.
Yeah.
And the plants will love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you see the industry and substrates going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So again, because I do believe that we're moving forward and we're making progress. I believe that the industry is going to go towards organic cultivation. I think it's going to go towards better honoring the plant. And again, that comes back to biomimicry.
Yeah,
it comes down to you know, we just need, you know, literally 4 or 5 years of the research that's going on now, and for it to really solidify, and we'll just understand better. I'm really confident of that. But I do see that it has to be a priority on the corporate level. And these guys are all getting hammered, throwing, you know, really mediocre shit on the market and not able to differentiate themselves. And you know, it's not that hard. Yeah. You know, like I said, I don't see any cost advantage to the scale there. But you just need really clean techniques and clear SOPs that you know, don't just take cultural practices and.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even carries over into genetics with the SOPs and SOP specific for genetics with companies. It's like that's the future, and empowering your customers with information that's going to get them better results. Because at the end of the day, quality is everything. I think quality. We can agree that quality is what's going to make the difference in the future market, and you know, having unique genetics, but also quality quality, it doesn't matter how good the genetics are if they're not grown well, unfortunately.
Yeah. And again, I think that those values will naturally reemerge as a matter of competition, actually.
Yeah.
And let's see what's happening down in Florida is Nitin Khanna figured out how to bring, in effect, brands down to Florida and tuck them under his license.
Right.
So they operate as independent cultivations, but they're in his building, and he's technically paying the salaries of the employees.
Interesting.
But like I said, that's how Ideal went in down there, and there's some real growers down there. I'm impressed. I'm excited.
Yeah,
because I feel a little bit of Florida as a home state. I was embarrassed. You live in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, the dynamics. And then once interstate commerce comes into play, how do you see that?
Yeah, so when I grew up in Ohio, you couldn't buy California wines.
Really?
You couldn't buy Coors beer. This is 60s. It took 20 years plus for states to negotiate out the alcohol restrictions that are very similar to cannabis. I don't know why Colorado is going to want to give up their cultivation taxes to California.
Yeah.
So I don't see it happening quickly. Even with federal, if federal was to go completely legal,
still,
I still think the states would want to retain control from the taxation standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic about it happening in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd be the first one to tell you that I have an interest in it remaining state by state.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I would love to go to Texas and be able to smoke this stuff from California. Yeah. But also, if Texas could produce their own, I would also be happy smoking good stuff.
And they will. I mean, what I would say is that the progress of the industry is very much been stunted by the economics of the industry.
Yeah.
People are just trying to survive.
It's rough right now. Yeah. It's really rough for cultivators.
Yeah. We lost several years in a row, 40% of our customers stopped operating.
Yeah, I mean, it affects everybody. So not just the cultivators suffer, the nutrient companies,
right?
The substrate companies, the lighting companies. And then there's an overabundance of some of these markets within like even lighting and other stuff like that, where there's so many, and I think there's some good products, just like everything else. There's good products and bad products out there.
And it's funny. The technology really is. I mean, I see things every month. Now, they've now got lights that are killing pathogens in the rooms and under canopy lights and also their strains they're very finicky, and OGs just don't like LEDs.
No, they don't like LEDs. They like CMH.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, and there's also, I mean, again, strains. There's so much drift.
Yeah.
And we're probably, I don't know. I don't know much about this stuff, but some of the things I'm reading is that we're seeing a steady weakening of the genes from when we had real landrace strains, and the plant's just less able to adapt. And I don't know if that's true, but the person said it with so much confidence, I had to believe him.
Yeah. Well, I think landrace varieties are grown in specific climates and specific environments that serve a purpose. And, I think a lot of those, there wasn't the inbreeding that we've done now to where we're bottlenecking ourselves, like with these gelatos and stuff like that are, I would say that that's potentially one of the contributions why we have things like hoplite and viroid that's such a problem, is because our genetics aren't as strong as they used to be.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And I don't know. I remember getting really stoned on what was probably 12 or 14%, and not that long ago. I mean, in the 90s even.
Totally. Sour diesel. Even when we first started testing, it was like the outdoor that was 12 to 14% was really strong and good. It was really good. I mean, we didn't care about percentages.
Right. Exactly. And now it's become a price marker, and in the market,
it's really sad.
Yeah.
To me, it's really sad, and it just is a sign of a uneducated market, because if people are buying for the THC percentage, first of all, that doesn't tell you the whole story. It doesn't even tell you really part of the story, other than it's going to get you maybe more high than something else. But really, I'm all about effect. Like I'd love if they put a description of how it made you feel, although that's subjective. It's it's very subjective. At least we could get an idea, or the flavor profiles, whether it's lemon or whether it's berries or fruit or gas.
Right.
I think there's so many other ways we could define the
I think that's evolving. I've heard that, the gas candy, sour, designation is good. 5 of them, whatever.
That's the way we need to go. And then in Humboldt, we need terroir. We need to identify it like wine. I would love that.
My partner and I are really keenly interested as to the role of terroir in cultivation of cannabis versus wine. The interesting thing, though, is that the biology you get ends up pretty much reflecting the nutrients you're feeding. You can start with anything, but it's going to change based on what you're feeding it and the plant itself. So we're trying to nail down what that really means. Could we go out and sample, Humboldt coastline, biology and culture it and see how it worked with some, plants that were, that was their terroir. We're trying to figure out how to do it and measure it and determine whether it's sustainable or valid. It's an interesting area. It's beyond my pay grade for sure.
That's exciting to me, though. Because you can go up, and I think I talked about Humboldt, but really it's all around the world, like terroir, because you can go from one region to the next and you could taste sour diesel, and maybe it's the same cut and it tastes completely different.
No. Well, any cultivar is both its environment and genetics.
Right.
You can't. There's no two. You can take the same exact genetics and grow it 2 different places. It's never going to be the same.
That's what gives you the phenotype is nutrition and environment. So that's what give you the expression that you see at the end.
Right.
And, and all these things with environment, you could have different levels of humidity. You can have different amount of sun, it's like the minerality, all these things as far as, it's pretty amazing getting into this. And then I also see this as something where we can open this up to the whole world, where you can get a tasting experience, driving up the 101 and you can stop at these farms and maybe get a tasting experience.
Yeah.
And then that puts the money back into the farmers, which is really what we need to do.
I was really hopeful that the farmers market legislation would pass. I don't know if it even came up for a vote, but I thought that was really a beautiful way to support the northern farmers.
Yeah, well, we did get approved tasting lounges. Okay. Cannabis lounges got approved. So that, Gavin Newsom, love him or hate him, he proved that.
Yeah. But can you purchase at them now?
I believe you can purchase at them now. They changed that. Yeah. So I believe. I'm not 100%, but I believe you can purchase at them.
It's so hard to keep up.
But you obviously can't consume alcohol, and it's going to be one or. And I believe they can do cannabis cafes.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the concept of a cannabis cafe. I'm not big on putting the cannabis in the food for myself, just personal preference. I'd rather smoke a amazing flower in a joint and then go eat some delicious food.
I'm with you, but I'm sure somebody's going to change that opinion. It's a lot of creative people out there, and when I was in the raw food business, what heat does is it melds flavors together. And it intensifies them,
right?
And it gets rid of water. So you can take a cultural flavor model and disassemble it and reassemble it with raw components, and you just have to adjust for that flavor intensity. And what I was really intrigued with, I was talking with a population geneticist just the other day, and he was talking about really understanding how to sequence the specific expressions of specific terpenes and then go ahead and breed from there.
Yeah.
Breed from the ability to take these, sub-expressions and put them together. And also to vary the intensity of the expression. I don't understand it.
I would love to talk to that guy. Yeah, I get a bunch of questions.
He was at Ancestry.
Nice.
He was leading their. They had a division which I think they closed, which was linking sequencing to specific health outcomes.
Yeah.
And with all the population genetics type of math.
I get excited. We talk about the white papers from Abstracts Tech that just came out on flavorants and sulfur-based compounds that are smaller molecules than terpenes. Thiols and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that gets me excited. Like breeding for those type of things, those type of expressions, and I feel like there is the relation to the effect in the flavor.
Oh, for sure.
And I love the flavor of cannabis. Though I love smoking good stuff. I love the way it makes me feel. And there's something great for every type of occasion too. So that's the beauty of it. We have all these different things in our arsenal, and we can pick and choose between them. It's like, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to a den company.
But you know what? It takes a long time.
Yeah.
Takes years.
It does. It takes all this stuff is it's the slow race. We're doing the marathon and not the sprint, but people want the sprint.
Right.
Yeah. We're Americans, and a lot of Americans.
Can't give it to them.
No, they want instant gratification. And I think that's part of the problem with the cannabis industry is it's not instant gratification. We didn't get here overnight. It took us a long time.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's still beautiful. It's, the fact that we're here right now talking about cannabis legally, no one's going to come arrest us for talking about it. I think that's great.
Yeah, they will close down my bank account.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And I'm an eternal optimist. I don't know what other choice exists.
I'm the same.
I once heard this philosophy that, the guy basically said, whatever happens to you has to benefit you.
Right.
And he had this whole big scheme that, the universe is perfect. And if it wasn't, it would have collapsed by now. And so everything that happens must be good to happen. But I just look at it from a practical standpoint, is that's where you learn, that's the opportunity. The only thing that makes any sense to do is to say, hey, I'm going to learn from this and we're going to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to go through enough bad stuff to really understand it, unfortunately. And I think that's part of getting older. I'm 47 now. And so I've learned, I'm almost 48 next month, but I've learned a lot in my 48 years about what to do and what not to do. And learning from my mistakes, learning from my friends' mistakes. But I feel like you have to make a certain amount of mistakes, and there's a certain amount of suffering has to go on in your life for you to appreciate how wonderful this place really is, even in the bad times.
I think both those points, the appreciation, but also the learning, the getting it right.
Yeah.
My father used to say to me, businesses don't fail because they don't have a reason for being. They fail because they run out of money before they figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I have to believe we can do this. We can do it much better than we're doing it now, and we will.
Yeah.
That's.
Well, and I think striving for that perfection, even though I feel like the needle constantly is moving, I think striving for perfection is what life's all about too. Because I think that it's never going to be perfect, but it could always be better.
Agreed. I hate to fall back on my father had all these sayings. We used to call them the sayings of Chairman Sam,
Nice.
He had all these really wise things. He would say, nobody is as good or as bad as you think they are, and then he would say, business is about getting people to do what you need them to do, whether you're working for them or they're working for you, whether you're selling to them or they're selling to you.
Right.
It's listening and finding out what it's going to take to make it work for the other person. And so he was pretty insightful while he was twisting me up.
Nice.
So, I love him.
Mentors. Life is all about having good mentors and people that we can learn from.
Right.
Elders, mentors.
Even younger
mentors. Even younger mentors. I'm learning from people that are younger than me.
Yeah.
But I learned working in the restaurant industry, I learned amazing things from my dishwashers. If you're willing to learn, there's amazing places you can find information, and especially cooking. It's like we had a guy. I learned how to make amazing food from one of my dishwashers. So if you had one piece of information for your younger self going into the industry with Bio365, what would that piece be?
My dilemma with Bio365, excuse me, is that I'm too old.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to happen too fast. I didn't want to wait 10 years and I couldn't force it, especially with the way the industry was. We were doubling every year, even though 40% of our customers were going out of business, but you couldn't sustain it. And so I think that was my biggest take on the problems. We actually went through a real, so there's something called Klein's corollary to Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law is whatever can go wrong will go wrong.
Right.
Klein's corollary is whatever hasn't gone wrong yet is just waiting for an inopportune time. So, we opened Bio365 with 2 pilot lines in New York and California in Redding. And when we validated that we had something and we wanted to invest in it, we built a scaled plant in Cortland, New York. Yeah. And that plant had a $40 a yard better direct labor cost than the plant in Redding. And at the time, which was the end of 2019, the shipping from New York to California was $40 a yard. So it looked like a wash. The intelligent thing to do was to close down the Redding plant, get rid of the overhead of the plant rent and the manager, the stuff that wasn't direct labor, and build a new one in California. And we did that, close it in January 2020, and COVID hit. And the freight rate tripled. All of a sudden, we were losing $200,000 a month in freight penalty for not having the West Coast factory. And then it's COVID, so we couldn't go out looking to find a place till the lockups ended. Right. Couldn't find a place because logistics warehouse space was so in demand for the logistics. Ordered all the equipment, which took 2 years to arrive because the control boxes they couldn't get the semiconductors for.
Right.
So, I mean, we lost a phenomenal amount of money during that period just in freight penalty. And that was just bad luck because it wasn't the wrong decision. In retrospect, it might have been, but that was the toughest thing for us to overcome. And finally we did. And so I think that, it was hard to get the market to understand that we weren't just a commodity substrate.
Right.
That we weren't just like a charcoal or a real cocoa or whatever. And so that's been our biggest challenge. But I think we're getting to the point where people understand who we are and they see all the people growing in it and they go, oh, something must be going on there. And so that's gotten us over the top, and we're now, profitable and growing and hope to continue. As I said, in other food crops as well as cannabis.
Yeah. If people are looking to find out more about you, where can they go?
Talk to my wife. Instagram, LinkedIn.
Bio365 at Instagram. You have a website.
Bio365.com.
Bio365.com.
And MSK Bio is my Instagram.
Yeah. Excellent.
But really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in and discuss our stuff.
So you've been on the list since the beginning of my show of people that I wanted as guests. So I'm glad you finally came in. I'm getting that list is getting narrowed down slowly but surely. So thank you for coming on the show, and really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below.